Hi everyone. Tonight, we enter a realm of ice and spray, where the sea exhales white mist and the deck under your boots feels like a frozen tomb. Picture the sound beneath you, the slow creak of wood soaked in salt and locked tight by cold. A pirate ship drifts under a pale, bone-white moon, rocking gently like an aging cradle. You can almost sense the smell of brine, the faint sweetness of tar, and the sharp bite of wind cutting across your face. You likely wouldn't last long in this cold, not without a drink to warm you or a blanket taken from some unfortunate trader. So before you settle in, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, only if you truly enjoy the content here. And while you're at it, tell me in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is. I enjoy seeing how far this small nighttime journey reaches. Now lower the lights. You grasp the railing and stare into a black horizon where sea and sky merge into a single stretch of darkness. It's winter in the North Atlantic, a night so harsh that even seagulls disappear and every breath feels sharp as glass. Yet below deck, men are sleeping. You hear the steady rhythm of snoring, the gentle sway of hammocks, pirates in the heart of winter finding rest where none should be possible. You duck under the low beams, careful not to strike your head, as lantern light flickers gold across damp wood. The air is heavy with the smell of bodies and rope, warm in the least pleasant way. You sense how fragile this shelter is. Above, the mast groans as the wind tugs at it. The rigging hums quietly, like an old tune. Every few moments, melted frost drips down the lines, freezing again before it reaches the deck. This isn't the romantic pirate tale many imagine. There's no laughter, no loud songs. Only survival and the skill of forcing sleep while the world outside tries to freeze you awake. Historians still debate whether pirates faced harsher cold than naval sailors or simply exaggerated their stories. But either way, the nights were unforgiving. You move farther in, stepping around a bucket half full of icy water that was once rain. The deck tilts just enough to pull your balance sideways. Here, beneath the main hatch, are the crew quarters, a space no bigger than a modern living room, yet packed with men, hammocks, and thoughts of warmth. A single lantern hangs from a beam, throwing unsteady shadows along the walls. Hammocks crisscross the room like webs, each holding a pirate curled tight against the cold. Some wrap their heads in scarves. Others layer wool, leather, even sailcloth patched with stolen silk. One man murmurs in his sleep, gripping a pistol as if the cold itself might steal it away. Another snores softly, his breath fogging the air. Outside, frost coats the railings. You imagine the wind pushing through thin planks, the sea air finding every gap. To endure nights like this, pirates used every method they knew. Fires were too dangerous aboard a wooden ship, but small oil lamps were hidden under overturned pots, giving off just enough warmth to trick the mind. Smoke was forbidden, yet a faint trace still hangs in the air, like a memory of heat. You sit beside a barrel, feeling the steady vibration of waves against the hull. It isn't loud, just constant, like a slow pulse. The ocean rocks the ship, and the ship rocks you. There's something almost gentle in that motion. Perhaps that's how they slept, by giving in to the sea's lullaby. A rat darts past your boot, its fur puffed up like a tiny winter coat. These animals thrived while men shivered. Some pirates tolerated them for the warmth they provided. Others believed rats brought good fortune, especially when they slept nearby. Odd perhaps, but effective. Historians still argue whether such beliefs were simple comfort or true faith. Above, the sails strain as ice cracks along their edges. The ship moves with effort, every plank protesting. Yet down here it feels oddly secure. The flickering light softens everything, turning reality hazy and dreamlike. You notice how pirates, despite the hardship, created small pockets of peace. A rope tied as a curtain, a carved token above a hammock, a scrap of fur lining a boot, small acts of resistance against the cold. You close your eyes briefly and listen. The ocean sighs, a distant gull cries, confused to be awake. Someone hums a low tune, half song, half prayer. You sense the shared resolve of the crew holding the night together. Every man asleep is one less concern, another thread keeping the ship intact. Strangely, in the coldest places, people often sleep the deepest. Maybe it's exhaustion, or perhaps the body quietly yielding to darkness. You think about the trust it took to close your eyes when danger could come as a freezing wave or a sudden blade. You shift, feeling the hardwood beneath you, and look up again. The lantern sways. The men breathe together. It's unexpectedly moving. This delicate calm. This borrowed warmth shared by thieves and wanderers. As your own eyes grow heavy, you realize something important. These pirates didn't just endure the cold. They outwitted it. They created warmth from stories, from rum, from one another. They turned sleep into an act of defiance, a small but meaningful victory. Outside, snow begins to fall, melting the moment it touches the salt water. The ship drifts on, quiet except for the soft whisper of sails. You imagine yourself swinging gently in one of those hammocks, sea below, stars above, the world frozen yet somehow alive. You let the feeling settle, slow and calm. You step deeper into the ship's dim interior, where the air grows heavier with damp wood, salt, and a faint scent of boiled leather. The cold here is different. It doesn't strike, it creeps. It slips through cracks, slides under your collar, and settles between your ribs. You can almost feel the hull trembling. It's easy to forget these ships were winter iceboxes, designed for combat and plunder, not comfort. The timbers soaked up seawater, and once frozen, they held the cold like stone. You rest a hand against the hull. It's colder than metal, rough and wet even here below deck. Some pirates claimed they could judge the outside temperature just by touching the walls. And perhaps they could. The sleeping space you're standing in would have held 20, maybe 30 men. There was no insulation and no heat source, only the slight warmth created by shared breath and bodies. As you listen closely, you realize sound itself signals life here. The steady pattern of breathing, the rustle of fabric, the distant wash of the sea beyond the hull. If you close your eyes, these sounds blend into something almost calm. But the cold beneath the planks never eases. It rises through the floor and into the hammocks, numbing toes and locking joints. Some men slept wearing their boots. Others rubbed grease onto their feet, a method borrowed from Baltic fishermen. Whale oil, when available, was said to work best. Historians still debate whether pirates learned these practices from northern sailors or discovered them through desperation. Either way, the odor lingered on the skin. You imagine a man shifting in his hammock, pulling his coat tighter, muttering a curse into the cloth. He's wrapped in layers of stolen fabric, velvet taken from a Spanish trader, linen seized from a captured sloop, perhaps a strip of wool once worn by a soldier. Each thread carries a record of theft and endurance. Beneath him, the boards creak as the sea presses its cold weight against the hull. What stands out is how the cold changed behavior. Pirates were not known for discipline, yet winter forced a kind of order. Quiet systems formed simply to survive the chill. Men rotated sleeping places so no one stayed too long against the hull. The closer you slept to the center, the warmer you remained. Those near the edges often woke with frost in their beards. You wonder whether anyone ever traded a portion of gold for a warmer spot. It seems entirely possible. You shift slightly and hear a low creak, the kind that reminds you the ship itself is moving and alive. It bends and sighs with every wave, as if breathing. That sound becomes the pulse of the night. Imagine lying here, half asleep, listening to the deep rhythm of the ocean striking wood. It's absorbing. Perhaps that's why many pirates, even in extreme cold, claimed they slept best at sea. One pirate journal, if accurate, described winter sleep as the longest hour in the shortest day. You understand the idea. Time stretches differently here. When the world outside is frozen and dark, dreams come more easily, or perhaps they simply grow stranger. Sailors spoke of voices in the ice, whispers from the sea calling them back. Historians still question whether these accounts were exhaustion-driven hallucinations or stories meant to comfort. You tilt your head and look at the ceiling. Drops cling to the beams like small mirrors, catching the lantern's weak glow. The air smells of salt and smoke mixed with something sour, likely unwashed wool. You imagine falling asleep here, wrapped in a blanket that never fully dries, surrounded by the breathing of men who might steal from you by morning. Strangely, it doesn't feel lonely. It feels shared, as if everyone aboard becomes equal during those hours of rest. The cold beneath the planks levels everyone. The most successful plunderer and the poorest deckhand freeze the same way. This may explain the unusual democracy historians often note among pirates. In the cold, rank fades when fingers go numb and teeth chatter. The man beside you isn't a rival or subordinate. He's another source of warmth. You take another breath, and the chill stings your lungs. You watch a hammock sway gently. Each one moves with its own rhythm, like waves inside the ship. Someone murmurs a prayer in a different language. A faint scent of rum drifts through the air. Near the far wall, a candle flickers, its flame struggling against the damp air, then finally fading. You crouch and touch the floor, tracing the seam where two planks meet. The gap is just wide enough to allow a thin line of light from the lantern above deck. It's a reminder that just overhead, the wind is roaring, trying to force its way in. Down here, though, it feels like a separate world, a delicate shelter balanced between storm and sea. The cold under the planks is unforgiving, yet it teaches patience. You realize that sleep here isn't simply rest, it's resistance. Every man who manages to close his eyes and dream has taken something valuable from the ocean. That quiet victory moves through the ship, unseen but present. Your thoughts drift, and you imagine this same vessel a century later, its remains resting at the bottom of a dark channel. The wood is gone, but perhaps a hammock still sways gently, preserved by salt. Maybe if you listened closely enough, you'd still hear the echo of breathing, the faint rhythm of sleep enduring across time. The ship creaks again. The sound travels up through your feet, into your chest, and settles there. It's unexpectedly reassuring. You think about how unusual it is that a place so cold can hold such warmth in memory. For a moment, as your eyes narrow against the lantern's glow, you understand what those men must have felt. The cold beneath the planks wasn't the enemy. It was the trial, and every night they endured it, they proved their place at sea. You listen to the soft scrape of fabric against wood and the hush of the tide outside the hull. The night has grown colder now, and each breath forms a pale cloud in the dark. Around you, pirates shift beneath makeshift coverings. Layers of stolen cloth, patched canvas, and anything that could keep a man from freezing before dawn. You run your fingers over one of these blankets. The texture catches you off guard. Soft in places, rough in others. A record of theft stitched together by necessity. Surviving ship logs from the late 17th century note that pirates rarely owned proper bedding. When they raided merchant ships, they took whatever promised warmth. Embroidered shawls, velvet drapes, even pieces of sailcloth soaked in oil for insulation. Nothing matched, but each layer carried its own story of stolen comfort. Some of these fabrics were surprisingly luxurious. Sailors once wrote of a corsair captain sleeping beneath a French tapestry worth more than his entire vessel. It was a striking contrast. Wealth wrapped around exhaustion. You can almost picture it. Gold-threaded fabric dulled by salt and grime, draped over a man with cracked hands and a frostbitten nose. A few private journals mention even stranger choices. One crew reportedly favored camel hair cloaks taken from North African traders, claiming they stayed warm even when wet. Others trusted Spanish serge, woven thick and heavy enough to block wind. Royal Navy records support this, noting that wool and tightly woven flax were among the few materials able to survive months of spray and cold at sea. It is well recorded that similar kinds of fabric later shaped what became known as naval issue blankets. Among pirates, however, nothing remained clean for very long. Salt quickly stiffened the fibers, and mildew settled in within days. The odor was impossible to ignore, sharp wool mixed with sweat and the metallic scent of the sea. A surgeon's journal recovered from a wreck near the Azores notes that sailors often rubbed their blankets with citrus peel to mask the smell. Whether this actually helped or simply made the quarters reek of sour lemons is impossible to know. You lean back and picture the scene. A line of hammocks rocking gently, each wrapped in mismatched spoils. The men sleep like bundled artifacts, faces hidden under stolen silks. You can almost hear the soft whisper of cloth each time the ship moves. Within that sound lies a lesson about surviving through improvisation. One unusual habit appears in several old accounts. Pirates sometimes heated small stones in the galley fire, when conditions allowed, and wrapped them in cloth to serve as basic bed warmers. The practice likely came from land-based taverns or Scandinavian fishermen, though historians still disagree on whether it was common or only occasional. Picture yourself holding one of those stones, its warmth slowly fading, while outside the wind tore at the rigging. As your thoughts drift, it becomes clear that these rough blankets mattered for more than heat. They were prizes, symbols of fortune and violence. Men wagered them, exchanged them, and even fought over them. One record from 1730 describes a dispute over a silk coverlet that turned into a knife fight, ending with both men thrown overboard. It sounds ridiculous, but when all your belongings fit inside a hammock, a blanket could feel priceless. You reach out and brush a frayed edge of cloth hanging nearby. The fibers crumble slightly under your fingers. It's easy to overlook how crude textile care was on ships like this. There were no washing machines and no soap that didn't burn the skin. Crews rinsed their blankets in seawater, slammed them against the deck, and hung them near the galley to dry, leaving them stiff as armor. Some even soaked the fabric in animal fat to keep moisture out. It helped a little, but everything became slick and greasy. One observer wrote that a pirate's bedding could stand upright when the cold was strong enough. The image is almost amusing. Rows of frozen blankets propped against the wall like pale sails. Yet that small absurdity captures what sleep meant here. Not comfort or luxury, but a fragile compromise with nature. You scan the room and notice one hammock unlike the others. Its fabric catches the light, smooth and pale. Someone, perhaps the quartermaster, has claimed a piece of silk embroidered with a fading crest. You imagine him climbing in at night, the cloth murmuring softly, a stolen kingdom wrapped around exhausted bones. There's irony in it. A man who robs nobles sleeps like one, only to wake in the same cramped, icy space as everyone else. Scholars still argue how much of this was practical and how much was performance. Did pirates seek fine fabric for warmth, or was it about pretending, briefly, that they ruled more than the sea? No record can settle that question. But as the lantern flickers over the tangle of cloth, it's clear that comfort here was assembled from disorder. You pull a blanket closer, just to feel its weight. It smells of salt and thyme. The threads scrape your skin, yet the heaviness is oddly soothing. You can almost see why men risked everything for a square of fabric that promised a single decent night's sleep. Outside, the sea murmurs against the hull, steady as breathing. The cold presses in, but beneath these layered spoils, the pirates rest deeply. You watch them for a moment, wrapped in patchwork wealth, and realize survival here depended less on strength than on invention. In the quiet of the night, surrounded by wavering light and the soft rustle of cloth, it's easy to believe that warmth itself was the greatest treasure a pirate could steal. You wake again to the ship's low hum, the endless dialogue between timber and wind. The lantern above has burned down, its glow dim and amber, casting slow-moving shadows across every surface. The air feels colder now. Instinctively, you reach toward the center of the room, half expecting a fire, but of course there is none. No flame could exist safely here. Pirate ships were floating tinderboxes. A single spark could wipe out an entire crew in moments. Tarred ropes, oiled planks, and gunpowder stored below all waited for one careless ember. Naval safety orders from the 17th century banned even royal sailors from lighting pipes below deck, and pirates followed the same rule, driven less by discipline than by instinct for survival. So how did they keep warm without a hearth? You can almost feel the desperation, the deep cold that settles into the bones. To counter it, sailors created what they called false fire. The secret wasn't flame, but suggestion, warmth through imitation. Small brass or iron pots were filled with sand and heated briefly in the galley during meals. Wrapped in canvas, the sand held its heat for hours. Placed beside a hammock, it gave off a gentle warmth, enough to trick the senses. Logs from captured pirate ships mention these devices as sleep or night hearts, a poetic name for a lump of heated sand, perhaps meant to inspire hope. At times, pirates borrowed ideas from other cultures. North African sailors used small perforated metal braziers that could rest on a plank. When charcoal was too risky, they turned to oil-soaked rope, letting it glow instead of burn. The result filled the air with a dense mix of smoke and salt, something between incense and a warning. Maritime historians still debate whether such methods were widespread or exaggerated in travelers' accounts. You crouch beside one of these pots, its surface dull and scarred. The warmth is faint, not enough to still your shaking hands, but the effort itself feels meaningful. Someone tried. It's easy to forget that beneath the legends of plunder and violence, pirates spent most of their lives simply trying not to freeze. There were smaller tricks as well. Some sailors rubbed vinegar on metal fittings to prevent ice from forming. Others hung damp clothes near barrels of fermenting spirits, using the mild heat as a kind of breathing stove. Ship surgeons advised rubbing pepper or crushed mustard on the skin to draw blood to the surface. A few privateer letters describe wrapping the body in oil-smeared sailcloth, sealing in heat like a crude wetsuit. It sounds foolish, yet the creativity is clear. Even without real fire, the cabin felt alive. The lantern sways gently, its reflections sliding over damp planks. The air feels heavy with layered smells. Spices from the galley, lamp oil, and a thin veil of smoke drifting down from the deck above. The scent is smoky and metallic, and it clings to everything. You can imagine it soaking into hair, blankets, and skin, until even warmth carried the hint of danger. A sailor's diary recovered from a Caribbean wreck once described nights like these. The dark burns without flame. We sleep beside shadows that remember heat. The line stays with you. It's poetic, almost too refined for men who lived by cannon and cutlass. Yet it captures something central to life at sea, the belief that even the illusion of warmth could hold despair at bay. You extend your hand and pause your palm above the pot. The heat rises weakly, pulsing like a heartbeat trapped beneath metal. Around you, the crew breathes together. A cough, a sigh, the slow creak of rope. These sounds replace the crackle of fire. The ship itself becomes a furnace of rhythm and motion, if not of true heat. Some pirates even formed small rituals around this imitation flame. Before sleep, they gathered briefly, hands cupped near the pots, sharing silence. A Dutch captive once recalled the men murmuring a few words in mixed tongues, English, Spanish, Arabic, before extinguishing the lantern. It wasn't prayer in the usual sense, more a quiet bargain with the night. Modern anthropologists label such behavior functional superstition, a way to impose order where none exists. You lean back and watch the dim light fade. The temperature seems to fall with it. The air prickles against your skin, cold slipping into each breath. And yet, there's an unexpected calm here. You begin to see how the absence of fire made every trace of heat precious. In some respects, pirate ingenuity anticipated later ship designs. 19th-century ironclads used hot water pipes and steam channels for warmth, ideas that echo these crude sandpots and oiled ropes. Maritime engineers acknowledge the similarity. No one can prove direct influence, but it feels plausible. Innovation often grows out of necessity. You settle back, your body following the ship's slow roll. Outside, the wind wails through the rigging, sails snapping like distant thunder. Inside, you feel a warmth unrelated to temperature, the warmth of understanding, of finding humanity where legend usually shows only brutality. The lantern flickers once and goes dark, plunging the space into shadow. For a moment, the world seems frozen. Then, deep within the ship, a faint red glow from a hidden pot stirs like an ember. The pirates sleep around it, faces softened by the dim light, dreaming of fires they could never risk lighting. As the ship drifts deeper into black water, you realize the truest warmth on this cold voyage doesn't come from flame at all. It comes from a stubborn refusal to stop adapting. You sway with the sea's rhythm, slow and measured, as if the world itself breathes beneath you. The steady creak overhead is constant and reassuring, like a lullaby sung by the ship. Tonight, you're inside a quiet revolution, one that changed how sailors slept forever. The hammock waits. A net of woven canvas hanging from the beams. You reach out and run your hand along the rough threads. They're firm yet forgiving, carrying the faint smells of salt, sweat, and tar. The idea seems obvious now, sleeping off the ground, held by air, but centuries ago it was a revelation. Early 16th century records credit the Taino people of the Caribbean with inventing the hammock long before Europeans ever hung beds from ropes. Spanish explorers noted their usefulness, and naval fleets soon adopted them. A naval account from 1597 claimed hammocks offered the surest rest in a storm, as they moved with the vessel and broke no bones. Pirates, always practical, pushed the idea further. Instead of stiff naval canvas, they used whatever fabric they could steal or salvage. Sailcloth, worn coats, pieces of cargo netting. It was a system built on theft and adaptation. You can picture them testing knots, tightening lines, competing to find the ideal height. A proper hammock had to swing freely without touching the deck. The higher it hung, the safer it was from rats and damp. One French privateer's record describes crewmen waxing the ropes to prevent fraying in winter air, making the lines shine like frozen veins under lantern light. Some even lined their hammocks with thin leather strips to block drafts. Historians still debate who introduced these refinements, but they agree pirates perfected comfort on unstable seas. You lower yourself into a hammock now. The motion surprises you. At first it feels unsteady, as if you might tip out, but then the rhythm takes hold and you float. The fabric shifts with your weight, responding to every roll of the ship. Your body learns to let go, and suddenly you're no longer resisting the movement, you're part of it. This is how pirates coaxed their bodies into rest during winter storms. The hammock turned chaos into a lullaby. Some sailors claimed the gentle rocking eased their joints and calmed the mind. Modern research supports this, showing that swinging sleep deepens rest and synchronizes brain waves, something those rough men discovered by accident. The ocean was teaching them neuroscience centuries before the word existed. Not everyone adapted quickly, though. Letters from captured sailors note that new recruits often fell out on the first night, waking to laughter and bruises. Veterans offered advice. Always sleep diagonally, never straight, or you'll roll like a fish in a net. The angled position kept balance and improved circulation. You try it now, stretching slightly, and the fabric shapes itself around you. The hammock sways gently as wind hums through the rigging above. You look up and watch lantern light ripple across the planks, turning the ceiling into waves of gold and shadow. For a moment, you forget you're on a pirate ship. You could be anywhere. A cradle, a cloud, a dream. In the quiet, a faint sound drifts from a nearby hammock. A low whistle. A sailor breathes through his nose, deep in sleep. The tone blends with the ocean's rhythm, oddly beautiful. You close your eyes and imagine hundreds of hammocks swinging together like pendulums, each carrying a man between waking and dreaming. Pirates were famous for disorder, yet their sleeping quarters moved in perfect coordination. Rows of hammocks hung at even intervals, overlapping slightly like fish scales, the only order the sea allowed. A visitor to an English ship once described the sight. In darkness, it seems a field of cocoons, men wrapped and swaying as if the ship itself rocks them to birth. You smile at the image. Feels exactly right. Not every innovation spread widely or quickly. Some ship captains resisted hammocks, arguing they made sailors too relaxed and slower to wake when combat began. Others feared tangled rigging or beams giving way. Still, by the 18th century, even navies that rejected pirate habits had adopted them. The hammock became more than a sleeping place. It grew into a defining feature of life at sea. Superstitions followed as well. Certain crews believed that cutting a man's hammock while he slept doomed his spirit to wander the ocean forever. Others tied coins or lucky charms to the rope ends, believing the added weight would steady their dreams. One story from a Portuguese corsair speaks of a sailor who hung a small wooden mermaid, carved from driftwood, above his hammock. He claimed she sang quietly to calm storms. Whether she ever did mattered little. No one dared remove her. You sink further into the rhythm now. The hammock creaks softly, and your breathing slows. The scent of old canvas and salt fills your senses as your thoughts begin to drift. Sailors often swore they slept better here than in any bed on land. On shore, the ground stayed rigid and uncaring. Here, inside this swinging cocoon, the sea itself seemed to cradle them. Historians still debate one lingering question: how pirates slept so deeply despite crashing waves and constant danger. Perhaps it was exhaustion, or perhaps the body learned comfort through routine. Whatever the reason, when winds screamed and frost coated the deck, the hammock remained the safest shelter a man could find. You pull the blanket tighter and let your body follow the motion. The ropes creak like an old lullaby. Cold air still lingers, but the hammock lifts you away from it, suspended between deck and hull. As your eyelids grow heavy, it becomes clear that for all their violence, pirates created something gentle here. A moving cradle balanced between threat and rest. On the harshest nights, that slow sway was worth more than gold. You wake to a different cold now. Clings to your skin like a damp glove, heavy and close. The air carries a faint taste of salt and sheep oil. Your clothes feel stiff yet warm, every fiber soaked with grease that smells like endurance. Slowly, you recognize the sensation. This is lanolin, the waxy barrier that protected countless sailors from freezing at sea. Naval quartermaster records from the 17th century note that wool was the first defense against winter. Not clean wool fit for land, but unwashed fleece thick with lanolin. It shed water and held heat, and pirates, ever practical, turned it into protection against frost. If you ran your fingers across one of their shirts, it would feel sticky and slightly glossy in lamplight. The smell never faded, a blend of salt, sweat, and animal oil. Pirates were said to rarely wash these clothes. A clean shirt meant less warmth. The grease preserved their lives. Some crews even gathered mutton fat from captured cargo, melting it down and rubbing it into coats and gloves before sailing into colder seas. The process was unpleasant and messy, but effective. Ship gossip from a seized sloop mentioned that a French sailor reeked of tallow yet feared no cold. You can almost hear the respect hidden inside the insult. There were more layers as well. Under the wool came thin linen, always damp but better than bare skin. Over everything, canvas or leather coats hardened with tar. Each layer trapped heat like overlapping plates. Some pirates carried scraps of seal skin or fur taken from Arctic traders. One Dutch account describes a man who lined his hat with rabbit pelts and claimed he never felt cold again. True or not, the image is easy to picture. A seasoned buccaneer dressed like a winter hunter, smiling beneath a beard stiff with frost. The texture of it all draws your attention. You brush your sleeve and feel the coarse weave, the oily grit leaving a faint shine on your fingers. Every movement creates a quiet rasp, fabric sliding against fabric. The air feels heavy, thick with grease and salt. It isn't pleasant, but it feels secure. When temperatures fall so low that breath turns solid, comfort becomes secondary. Warmth is everything. Many are surprised that pirates could sleep in such heavy clothing. It seems unlikely, yet written accounts describe men wrapped tightly, their clothes serving as blankets. One captured privateer wrote of men bound so tightly that no skin met the air. Suffocating perhaps, but their blood stayed warm. Loosen a collar and the cold crept in at once, relentless as a thief. Some ships tested other materials. Cotton was scarce and nearly useless, soaking water instantly. Waxed hemp canvas or fish oil-treated cloth became favored outer layers. These garments squeaked when folded, and in severe cold could nearly stand on their own. Some joked the coats were more disciplined than the crew. It's easy to imagine the nightly routine. A pirate might remove only boots and weapons, then settle into his hammock, greasy while scratching his skin. The smell of tallow and salt would fill the air, mixing with the ship's damp musk. A lantern might sway nearby, catching light on metal buckles. He'd pull a rough blanket over his shoulders, shift once to find balance, and fall asleep. These clothes aged into artifacts. Archaeologists have recovered fragments from wrecks in the Caribbean and the North Sea. Under microscopes, fibers still glimmer faintly with traces of lanolin. Scientists note that even after centuries underwater, the natural oil resists decay. It's strange to consider that what once shielded living bodies now protects history itself. Not everyone agreed on the right amount of grease. Some crews applied so much fat that their coats became fire risks near lanterns. Others rejected the method entirely, relying on dry wool and strong rum instead. Modern researchers can't say which approach worked best. Both carried danger. Too much oil risked flame. Too little risked freezing before morning. You picture yourself there now, resting inside that oily cocoon. The hammock presses against your shoulders, the smell of lanolin thick in your breath. The ship creaks and the ropes sway gently. You close your eyes, briefly becoming one of them, half asleep, half numb, yet strangely at ease. Your body heat stays trapped while the cold remains outside. Some nights, pirates rubbed their hands with a mixture of lard and ashes, believing it prevented frostbite. The paste sealed pores, slowing heat loss. The same blend polished boots, blurring the line between hygiene and superstition. It was curiosity shaped by experience, not science. Above you, the sea groans softly against the hull. You can hear it first, the deep, steady grind of ice sliding through dark water. The cold is so intense it feels almost alive. Yet inside layers of wool and tallow, stiff with grease, you endure. You might even manage to sleep. It's no surprise sailors later joked that pirates smelled warmer than they appeared. In this rocking coffin of timber and salt, warmth was never about comfort. It was about lasting through the night. Wrapped in lanolin-soaked wool and oil, they showed that survival could be simple and deeply human, refusing to surrender to the cold. You sense it before it comes into view. The faint tap of a cup, the rough drag of a barrel across the deck, the sharp release of a cork. The air below deck is colder than usual, but it carries the bite of rum. Spicy and sharp, a heat that moves faster than flame. You know what hour this is. It's time for rum dreams, that nightly custom when pirates slipped into the space between awareness and sleep. Naval records from the late 17th century note that sailors received a daily ration of rum diluted with water, known as grog. It lifted morale and gave the body a feeling of warmth, at least briefly. Pirates, free from regulation, refined it with sugar, citrus, or whatever spices they seized from merchant ships. Nutmeg, cinnamon, and clove floated through the air like fragrance. One swallow could convince the body it was no longer freezing. You watch the crew gather in small, quiet groups. Their motions are slow and measured. Each man grips his tin cup with both hands, not just to drink, but to draw heat from the metal. The liquid shines amber under lantern light. Voices stay low. The loud laughter of the day has faded. In its place is shared silence, a bond formed by fatigue. One sailor hums softly. Another chuckles at a private thought. What stands out is how organized this brief disorder became. Pirates rejected many forms of authority, but rum was governed strictly. The quartermaster measured every serving with care, guarding the barrel like gold. This wasn't just fairness, it was necessity. Too much alcohol on a cold night led to dehydration, cramps, and worse. Accounts from seized vessels tell of crews who froze because they were too drunk to protect themselves. Still, others claimed rum carried them through the harshest winters. There's a certain irony in that. Rum was both remedy and risk, comfort and threat. A ship's surgeon once wrote that rum warms the body while cooling judgment. The observation holds true. You can almost sense it now. The slow weight settling into your arms and legs, the dulling of sound, the drifting of thought. It's easy to see why pirates treated this drink as a ritual of release. One Spanish maritime record mentions pirates adding crushed pepper to their rum to stay alert while enjoying its heat. The burn in the throat earned it the name fire in the belly. Some historians suggest the practice came from Caribbean traditions where chili was used to fight nighttime cold. Others argue it was exaggerated, but the idea suits the pirate mindset. Pain as confirmation of being alive. Lantern light flickers as a sailor tilts his cup, rolling the rum along its sides before drinking. It gleams like thick honey. The scent is sweet, nearly intoxicating before it reaches your lips. You take a sip. The taste surprises you, hot, yes, but softened by sugar and a trace of citrus. Feels active, almost breathing. When the mugs are drained, the space grows quieter. The men head back to their hammocks, some swaying as they climb in. One murmurs a sea shanty, the tune curling through the air like smoke. You lie back and listen, the words blending with the creak of wood and the sigh of wind. It's remarkable how such a simple habit bound the crew together. They had no priest, no chapel, no family beyond this deck. But every night they shared warmth through drink. It eased the pain of cold muscles and the loneliness of endless water. In its own way, rum served as their prayer. You glance at the faces nearby. Some are already asleep, cups still loose in their hands. Others stare upward, eyes unfocused, caught between memory and dream. The cold seems distant now. You wonder what fills their sleep. Treasure, escape, or maybe just a bed that stays still. What draws your attention most is how the ship's motion matches their breathing. Hammocks sway. The hull groans. Waves tap softly against the planks. Everything moves together, like one slow pulse. The drink has stitched them into the rhythm of the sea. There are stories, of course. After too much rum, some pirates claimed to see spirits on deck or lights drifting beneath the water. A few said the ocean whispered their names when the wind changed. Modern psychology might explain this as exhaustion mixed with mild hypothermia. To them, it meant the sea was aware of them. One unusual account from a Jamaican court record tells of a captured buccaneer who swore that after a heavy night of grog, he dreamed the sea rose up and rocked the ship like a mother soothing a child. He woke with frost on his beard and warmth in his chest. No one believed him, but the image lingers. You close your eyes and breathe in. Rum hangs in the air with salt and smoke. Your body feels lighter, edges softened. Sleep approaches quietly. The ship sways, and the sound of waves blends with the low breath of men around you. Today, experts point out that alcohol actually lowers body temperature. Still, these pirates relied on it as a nightly solution. It was an illusion, but illusions matter when wind screams and ice hardens on the rigging. The warmth passed quickly, yet in that moment it was enough. Your thoughts drift between waking and dreaming, stomach warm, fingers numb. Outside, frost coats the deck, turning the ship into something like glass. Inside, a few traces of heat remain. In empty mugs, in shared hearts, in you. As sleep finally takes hold, you understand that the most meaningful warmth isn't the kind that lasts, but the kind you remember, sip by sip as you fall asleep. You wake again to quiet voices near the hatch. The ship moves gently, each motion softened by ice clinging to the hull. It's near midnight, and the sound of men changing shifts fills the air. The pattern is familiar, controlled, precise. The night watch has begun. Pirate ships, despite their image of disorder, followed clear rules when it came to rest. The quartermaster maintained the balance, deciding who rested and who remained on watch. According to a surviving code from Bartholomew Roberts's crew, watches were arranged in pairs so no man ever faced the darkness alone. You can almost picture them now, one carrying a lantern while the other studies the horizon for unfamiliar lights. The ship itself required this pattern. The sea never rested, and neither could the entire crew at once. 2 hours on, 2 hours off, sometimes 4 when the weather allowed. This rotation shaped their lives so deeply that even ashore, many struggled to sleep without the creak of ropes or the scent of tar. Modern researchers examining naval journals have observed that sailors carried this rhythm long after leaving the sea, waking in the night as if waiting for the next bell. Inside the sleeping quarters, those off duty shift in their hammocks, partly aware of movement overhead. The sound of boots on planks, the quiet check of weapons, the rustle of fabric. These became part of the command's nightly rhythm. You begin to wonder what it felt like to live between exhaustion and alertness, where waking and sleeping blurred like mist. A letter from a captured vessel described the quartermaster as the keeper of dreams. He chose who could sleep and who had to remain awake. In a world without clocks, time was measured by bells, moonlight, and weariness. The quartermaster's role was nearly sacred because fairness ensured survival. Too many asleep meant blindness. Too few resting led to breakdown. To keep the system functioning, pirates developed small methods to stay alert. A man on watch might chew coffee beans or salted lemon peel. Others splashed cold water on their faces or sang quietly into the wind. Diaries from Dutch privateers mention sailors pinching one another awake, laughing despite chattering teeth. It was cooperation shaped by necessity. The quartermaster often stayed awake longer than anyone else, pacing the deck with his coat pulled tight. His eyes scanned the horizon, watching for movement. He listened for changes in the hull's creak, a sound as familiar as a pulse. The sea spoke to those who paid close attention. Below deck, the crew trusted his vigilance. You imagine them sleeping deeply, comforted by the knowledge that someone remained watchful. It was a fragile kind of peace, but it worked. One preserved account from 1720 notes that a pirate ship could cross vast oceans with only a dozen men awake at a time. The rotation was so exact that even storms rarely disrupted it. There is a quiet efficiency in this order. The chaos of daylight, plunder, shouting, arguments, gave way to controlled calm. At night, the ship's rhythm slowed, and the pirates seemed almost gentle. Some men whispered stories before sleep, sharing memories of ports and lovers they would never see again. Others turned toward the wooden ceiling and counted breaths until the next watch. You picture the quartermaster's lantern sweeping the deck, its flame reduced to a red glow to protect tired eyes. The light moves steadily, touching faces briefly before disappearing into darkness. You hear the soft thud of boots and the faint rattle of a pistol belt. He says nothing. He does not need to. His presence alone provides reassurance. An English traveler once observed that pirates slept better than kings because their rest was earned through structure, not comfort. There is truth in that. The discipline of the watch kept them alive and gave shape to their dreams. Some modern historians argue that this nightly routine, more than flags or written codes, allowed pirate communities to survive. Without shared rest, no ship could endure a winter sea. The wind rises briefly, shaking the masts. A man above shouts in an unfamiliar language, and the quartermaster responds with calm authority. The sound fades, absorbed by the night. The ship steadies. Below, the men continue sleeping. One shifts in his hammock. Another murmurs in his dreams. Perhaps he dreams of land. Or perhaps he dreams of the sea watching him in return. You pull your blanket tighter and consider the trust filling this narrow space. The kind of trust that allows a man to sleep knowing another stands guard. Some believe the quartermaster's fairness made pirate ships more democratic than many kingdoms on land. Every man shared both fatigue and rest. Equality was measured in hours and stars. You close your eyes and listen to the bells above, marking another watch. The sound is soft yet certain, reminding you that time continues even when the world feels still. As sleep approaches, you realize this quiet system of shifts, this unspoken agreement between the waking and the dreaming, was the true rhythm of pirate life. They survived the cold not through luxury, but through order, fairness, and trust. You remain awake a moment longer, eyes fixed on faint light seeping through the cracks above. The air smells of damp rope and wax, a scent that settles into every breath until it feels familiar. Around you, the ship grows silent again. The night watch has taken position, and those below slip into uneasy sleep. But rest here was never entirely peaceful. There was an unwritten rule in this floating world. Silence must be respected, or tempers flared quickly. Life at sea sharpened every sound. A cough, a footstep, even the creak of a turning hammock could strain nerves worn thin by cold and fatigue. Some ships, according to letters preserved in maritime archives, enforced quiet through unspoken threats. A man who snored too loudly might wake to a cut hammock or a soaked blanket, punishment from frustrated crewmates. It seems harsh, but noise at night meant lost rest, and lost rest led to errors in storms or combat. You try to picture it. Dozens of men packed shoulder to shoulder in a space no larger than a tavern cellar, each pretending to be alone. The only sounds are waves against the hull, the occasional sigh, and steady breathing. That fragile silence was their shared lifeline. Silence had its own language. Cough suggested illness. A whisper hinted at a bad dream. When someone's breathing changed suddenly, others noticed. Even half asleep, they listened for patterns, just as they read the sea or the wind. In a world without clocks, Sound marked the passage of time. The steady rise and fall of sleep confirmed that the night still lived. There are unusual stories about how seriously pirates guarded this code of rest. One sailor's memoir from the 1720s recalls a man who snored like a drum. The crew once tied a small pebble in a cloth and placed it under a man's chin so that snoring would wake him. It worked, though he claimed he dreamt of being stoned by ghosts. Another report mentions a ship where the cook forbade speaking after midnight, believing the sea itself listened and grew jealous of human voices. Perhaps superstition, but even beliefs could act as law. Historians note that rest aboard pirate ships functioned like a currency. A good night's sleep bought patience, courage, even mercy. Without it, disorder followed. Court records describe mutinies sparked by minor arguments over noise. When men live in such close quarters, privacy becomes imaginary, and silence becomes sacred. You shift in your hammock and hear the wood creak beneath you. The sound seems amplified in the stillness, and for a moment, you hold your breath to avoid breaking the spell. The body quickly learns reverence when surrounded by others who value quiet. There is an almost ritual rhythm to the night. Watches change, lanterns sway, hammocks drift. Beneath this calm is tension, an energy that hums under the skin when everyone pretends to sleep. Thoughts must have kept them awake. Guilt, fear, hope, or simply aches from endless cold. Some scholars suggest pirates' devotion to silence came not only from practicality but from superstition. They believed noise could stir the spirits of the dead, particularly after battle. A few wrecks reveal charms carved into beams or small tokens hidden beneath floorboards to appease restless souls. Whether ritual or habit, the idea persists. You imagine a ship drifting through the Black Sea, full of sleeping men and unseen spirits, both calmed by the same fragile hush. Cold sharpens every creak into a whisper. Perhaps this explains why sailors spoke to their ship as if it were alive, because in the quiet, it seemed to respond. A Danish logbook recounts a pirate who carried a small seashell in his pocket. Before sleep, he would hold it to his ear, claiming the ocean spoke through it and promised another dawn. His crewmates laughed, but after he died in a storm, they nailed the shell to the mast for luck. Small rituals like this helped preserve peace in a world where peace rarely lasted. You lie back, letting silence settle. Your ears grow attuned to every sound. The rope's faint groan, melting frost dripping, the ship's heartbeat. The noise becomes hypnotic, as if the sea breathes through the wood, a slow pulse sustaining the world. The absence of chatter allows the mind to wander. You consider how these feared men were bound by a gentle rule: let others rest. For all their violence, they understood that sleep preserved humanity. Outside, a gust rattles the mast, but no one stirs. The code of quiet remains. Your hammock sways slightly, lulling you again. The air hums faintly, like a seashell's echo. Gradually, silence itself becomes the ship's true treasure, earned together, night after night. As you drift, the ocean's hush wraps around you like a second blanket. The ship rocks gently, the cold persists, and quiet remains steady, watchful, enduring. You awaken to a softer world. The wind has calmed, and the deck above exhales like a living creature. Darkness persists, but there is comfort in the waves' constant rhythm, brushing the hull with steady cadence. The sound fills the ship, forming a lullaby carved from the sea. On land, sailors often found silence unnatural, unable to rest without motion and sound. A creaking, singing ship was alive, safe, steady. A silent ship, in contrast, signaled danger. Naval and pirate logbooks note men's anxiety during calm waters, fearing quiet preceded a storm. You listen. The timbers groan softly, expanding and contracting as cold water seeps through seams. Ropes slap against the mast. This is music of friction and patience. You can almost see the waves in sound alone. Long silver arcs glinting under moonlight, curling and collapsing like visible whispers. Sailors named these sounds. The low hum along the hull, the whale's song, the sharper crack of rigging as the wind's tongue. Every creak conveyed meaning. Journals describe how these noises lulled men to sleep faster than any song. Modern sleep research confirms what sailors instinctively knew. Rhythm and repetition calm the mind, slowing the heartbeat for dreams to arrive. You feel your pulse sinking to the ocean, a great slow drum. Harmony like this was rare in a life full of danger. Perhaps this explains pirates' devotion to their ships. Vessels were companions, breathing and resonating with their crew. A merchant prisoner recorded a pirate claiming he knew when to sleep by the wave's pitch. Low hums meant the sea sang them to dream. The prisoner mocked him, but the idea lingers because it feels true. You hear that same hum now, echoing through wooden ribs. Storms could drown everything in thunder, with men clinging to hammocks like prayer beads. Yet calm winter nights offered tenderness. Frost on the surface, salt mist in the air, and waves brushing the hull like a mother smoothing a child's hair. Even cold felt gentler with rhythm and sound. The human mind finds comfort in repetition. Pirates understood the hypnosis of rhythm. Weeks of motion make sleep a surrender rather than a choice. Some sailors could sleep through cannon fire but woke instantly when the sea stilled. Silence meant danger. Noise meant safety. The sea itself was their guardian. You close your eyes, and the rhythm of the sea deepens. Waves strike in measured intervals, almost like steady breathing. Between them, faint drips fall from the beams, tiny metronomes keeping time. There is a pulse in everything, the water, the wood, yourself. The sound has weight, feeling ancient, older than the ship, older than language itself. A traveler once wrote that sailors dream in rhythm, their souls swaying with the tide. You consider that now, realizing how profoundly the sea shaped their inner worlds. Every sound became part of their memory, their comfort, even their identity. Sleeping on land, away from this music, must have felt like being deaf to one's own heartbeat. Gradually, the sound shifts, the waves slow, the ship steadies. Even the ocean seems to drift toward sleep. You picture the crew above, cloaked and leaning against the rails, frost settling on their sleeves. Perhaps their eyes close for a moment, trusting the sea to awaken them if danger comes. One scholar once observed that sailors lived inside the lungs of the world, breathing with the tide. That image feels accurate now. You inhale, tasting salt and wood smoke. You exhale and the sea responds. You are no longer separate from it. Outside, a pale glow rises. Maybe moonlight through clouds, or dawn creeping unnoticed. The water glimmers like glass. The ship slows, rocking so gently that motion seems to vanish. The sea, constant yet ever-changing, guides you toward sleep as if it has always known the way. You take a final deep breath. The air is cold, clean, alive. The sound of the sea fills your ears softly, and everything else fades. The ship rocks once more, then settles into perfect rhythm. In that rhythm, you let go, trusting the ocean to carry you through the night. The cold grows sharper. You feel it in your fingers as you pull the blanket tighter, in your breath rising as mist. Lantern light flickers weakly, stretching shadows along the curved walls. Tonight the sea is quiet, but the cabin air feels heavy, thick with the scent of sweat and salt. Around you, pirates prepare for rest, and you notice something curious. Some sleep fully clothed, boots and belts included. Others shed nearly everything, pale skin glowing in dim light. Each insists their method is the only way to survive the cold. Naval logs from the late 17th century show sailors were divided. Some claimed sleeping clothes trapped moisture, chilling them by morning. Others argued layers kept the cold at bay. No science guided them, only habit and superstition. Arguments sometimes lasted hours, whispered across hammocks as men tested courage against the winter air. You watch one pirate, hair braided with beads, carefully remove his coat before crawling into his hammock, folding it beneath him as a shield against drafts. Another, thick-bearded and stubborn, laughs and tucks his pistol into his belt, sleeping in his wool coat. The first believes warmth comes from air trapped near the skin. The second believes it comes from refusing to expose the body at all. Both fall asleep quickly, confident the sea will prove them right. An English privateer recorded a similar scene. Half of us slept as if the world were frozen solid, the rest naked, as if in the Indies. He concluded neither group was wrong, only accustomed to its own comfort. Sailors came from every corner, each with a different philosophy of sleep. Some rubbed oil on their chests to seal in heat. Others dusted themselves with flour to stay dry. It seems odd to imagine a man powdered like dough before bed, yet such methods were practiced, especially among northern crews. Superstition often outweighed logic. Some believed sleeping naked let the body breathe with the sea, a phrase noted in a Portuguese logbook. Others feared exposing themselves would invite spirits. Maritime folklorists still debate whether these beliefs stemmed from religion, practicality, or isolation-induced madness. You touch your own sleeve, wondering which rule you'd follow. The air is so cold your breath stings. Yet loosening your collar brings warmth. Perhaps both sides were right. Perhaps survival depended more on confidence than method, the belief that your choice would see you through the night. Some pirates slept in armor on tense voyages. Diaries describe captains insisting men remain dressed in case of sudden attack. Imagine waking to the shout of an approaching ship, stumbling across the deck with frozen fingers, trying to fasten buttons. Armor kept sailors ready but brought aching muscles and shallow rest. Their dreams must have felt like battles. Others risked vulnerability for comfort. A Spanish record tells of sailors sleeping stripped to the waist, wrapped in stolen blankets embroidered with gold. Their reasoning: if the wealthy could sleep bare, so could they. Laughter and pride kept them warm, not science. The cabin carries the scent of oil and wool. Breathing is slow, steady, each man following his chosen method against the cold. A pirate near the door murmurs a prayer in an unfamiliar language, tracing a bone charm, asking perhaps for forgiveness, or simply for the wind to stay outside. You lie still, feeling would vibrate faintly beneath you. Cold slips through plank seams. Your body adjusts, mind quiets, hearing the smallest sounds. A sigh, a shifting rope, creaking leather. Sleep here is not comfort. It is surrender, a negotiation between body and world. Historians note that these nightly rituals reveal more about human endurance than piracy itself. Belief, habit, and necessity intertwined in small acts. Whether clothed or bare, trusting superstition or habit, sailors were simply trying to survive on a frozen sea. Lantern light dims further. Smoke rises from the wick, painting trembling gold on the ceiling. You glance at the two men beside you, one wrapped in wool, the other bare-chested under a stolen sheet. Both breathe steadily, exhaustion erasing differences. The ship sways gently, and you close your eyes. The cold brushes against your face like an unseen hand, but the hammock rocks with the rhythm of the tide, and warmth grows slowly from within. Here, sleep is not about comfort. It is an act of faith, a silent agreement with the sea that you will wake again. As darkness narrows the world, that trust feels enough. Whether wrapped in wool or stripped bare, every man aboard drifts into the same dream, carried by courage, exhaustion, and the endless sound of moving water. The night stretches long, the cold deepening until even the boards beneath your hammock seem to hum with frost. Around you, the crew sleeps fitfully. Some shift in their hammocks, murmuring words you cannot understand. The air feels alive with the weight of their dreams. Pirates hardened by salt and battle still carried a fragile tenderness into sleep, believing the sea spoke to them through visions. A few 18th-century journals record these superstitions. One sailor wrote that dreaming of calm water brought fortune, while dreaming of black waves signaled an approaching storm. Another claimed a white gull in a dream meant a letter from home, though few had homes left. Even men who trusted no god still trusted their dreams. You turn toward the faint lantern light swinging from a beam. Shadows ripple across the walls like water. The ship breathes in its sleep, rising and falling with the waves, and it feels as though the dreams below mingle with the wind above. Stories of prophetic dreams were common. One merchant's record mentions a pirate dreaming of a sea serpent circling the ship. The next day, a leak appeared in the hull, coiled like the creature. They repaired it quietly and toasted the dreamer. Another account tells of a man seeing his dead brother on the waves, beckoning him home. He deserted at the next port and was never seen again. These tales wove into shipboard life, and even skeptics listened closely at dawn. Dreams blurred faith and fear. Many pirates wore charms, small bones, shells, coral, believing they protected sleep from spirits of the drowned. Some sang softly before resting, not for company, but to warn ghosts away. Ethnographers note similar habits among fishermen worldwide, each convinced the sea watches its children's dreams. You can almost feel that presence now, the vastness pressing against the wooden walls like a listening ear. The ship creaks softly, and for a moment you think you hear a voice. It is not human, just the sea against the hull, but the rhythm makes your skin prickle. Perhaps this is what sailors meant when they said the sea remembers. A French privateer once described a night when the crew refused to sleep. One man dreamed of water flooding the hold, and though mocked at first, unease spread quickly. By morning, they were still awake, awaiting proof of doom that never came. The captain forced them to rest, threatening punishment for anyone speaking of dreams again. That week, a storm broke their main mast in two, and no one laughed afterward. You breathe slowly, feeling the damp chill settle. Hammocks sway together, and the men seem at peace, though brows twitch and lips move silently. What will they dream of tonight? Gold, cannon fire, or perhaps something gentler? A tavern, a lover, a warm bed that doesn't move. Even those who lived by the sword carried tenderness into sleep. Scholars suggest the harsh rhythm of sea life shaped the mind uniquely. Constant rocking, lack of light, and repetitive tasks blurred waking and sleeping. Some spoke of sea dreams, a trance arriving even while standing at the helm, half-conscious yet alert to the tide. Among pirates, dreams were also storytelling tools. Before dawn, men whispered visions to one another, weaving prophecy into entertainment. One dreamed of a chest glowing with fireflies, another of a mermaid calling his name. These tales became omens, jokes, or excuses for bold plans. To dismiss a dream outright was unlucky. One rare court record describes a pirate accused of mutiny, claiming he acted on a dream. He swore the sea instructed him to take the ship, promising calm waters if he obeyed. Judges laughed, yet he spoke without fear, fully convinced. You shift in your hammock, the motion gentle as breath. The air is colder near the floor, warmer near your chest. The sounds of the ship, groaning timber, distant waves, faint hums of sleeping men, blend into one. It is easy to imagine these sounds turning into voices within a dream, the sea whispering to those willing to listen. The lantern above flickers, its flame bending before settling. Your eyes grow heavy. A familiar calm rises, the kind that precedes sleep. Perhaps tonight, you too will see what they saw. The ocean shimmering under stars, a horizon endless, a whisper from the deep claiming you as part of it. The ship tilts slightly with a passing wave. You wake to someone humming softly. Not a song, but a rhythm as slow as breathing, softened by distance. The lantern trembles. The air is colder than ever, yet warmth lingers. An invisible gentleness passes from one man to another. You turn and see two pirates beneath low beams. One wraps his cloak around the other. No words are exchanged. The gesture is simple but monumental, a quiet defiance against the cold. Accounts from the 17th century note that companionship was the only true comfort. Pirates, despite their fearsome reputation, survived by shared humanity, caring for one another when the outside world seemed determined to forget them. According to a captured frigate's log, men often shared coats, blankets, or even body heat when the temperature dropped below freezing. The chronicler called it the mercy of thieves. You watch as a barely awake sailor passes a tin mug to his neighbor. Inside, a few mouthfuls of warm grog rise faintly in steam. The man receiving it nods silently, drinks, and sinks back into his hammock. A small kindness, given without words, yet it carries weight. Gestures like these bound the crew far more tightly than flags or oaths. Historians still wonder how pirate societies maintained loyalty despite being composed of outcasts. Some credit shared hardship, while others suggest the constant danger of sea life stripped away pretenses, leaving instinctive compassion. Perhaps the cold itself was the teacher. When every breath turned to frost, Selfishness was a luxury no one could afford. You close your eyes briefly and notice other sounds. Soft laughter, whispered jokes, a distant snore near the bow. These aren't the disciplined sounds of an army, but the noises of a family improvising survival. It is strangely comforting. Though the ship may be frozen through and through, warmth flickers quietly among the men. Recorded stories describe pirates giving their own blankets to injured crewmates. One Spanish prisoner wrote that during a cold spell in the Bay of Biscay, a wounded man was placed between two healthy sailors to keep him alive. He survived, though the others woke shivering. No one spoke of it, yet everyone remembered. Acts like these rarely enter history books, but they defined the rhythm of pirate nights. Even the music served a purpose. A quiet song, passed from mouth to mouth, helped regulate breathing in the freezing air. The lyrics were likely nonsense, a mix of words from many ports, but the sound bound the crew together. Some anthropologists argue that sailors instinctively used song to pace breath and share warmth, much like animals huddling in rhythm to conserve energy. You hum along almost unconsciously. The vibration in your chest is faint but tangible. The sound merges with the ship's low creak and the whisper of waves, a conversation between the living and the sea. In the half-light, you notice a young sailor, perhaps 18, carving a small wooden object. His hands tremble from cold. When finished, he hands a bird-shaped charm to an older man, who smiles tiredly. It may be gratitude for a borrowed coat or a reminder that kindness can survive even here. Wreck accounts mention similar tokens. Carved shells, cloth scraps tied in knots, initials etched into spoons. Archaeologists call them marks of presence. Small ways pirates made their existence tangible in a world where everything could sink at any moment. These tokens were exchanged like promises, sometimes placed in hammocks beside the dead before burial at sea. You stretch beneath the blanket and feel faint heat where another hand brushed yours earlier. It lingers longer than expected. The cold momentarily softens, replaced by something gentler. The warmth of another, even accidentally, feels like a rebellion against the night. A curious letter from a sailor's widow recalls her husband speaking of sleeping with the heart of the ship. She thought he meant the waves, but now it seems he referred to this. Men breathing together, keeping one another alive through long, freezing hours. You glance toward the door, where a faint draft curls smoke from the lantern. Two men beneath it have stopped humming. One has fallen asleep on the other's shoulder. The older man adjusts the blanket carefully, not waking him. The ship rocks, and they sway together to an invisible rhythm. This quiet tenderness contrasts sharply with the legends of pirate violence. But it is truer. Pirates could be cruel, but in the cold, cruelty was useless. Only cooperation could withstand the frost. As you close your eyes again, the scene settles. Hammocks swaying like gentle tides, the scent of salt and grog, the low murmur of men breathing warmth into one another's dreams. The cold persists, but human touch has softened it. For a fleeting, perfect moment, the ship feels less like a vessel of thieves and more like a shared heartbeat against the endless winter sea. Outside, the world is silent, except for ice grinding against the hull. You open your eyes to the dim gray of a winter morning at sea, the half-light that never fully arrives. The ship groans under its frozen skin, with strains under the cold. Ropes above, stiff as iron, are white with frost. You sit slowly. The air stings your face, and breath escapes like smoke. Somewhere above, a cough echoes through the planks. The night has passed, but warmth has not returned. Logs from early 18th century voyages note that even experienced sailors dreaded nights when rigging froze. Ropes that once sang with the wind became rigid rods of ice. Sails stiffened, pulleys jammed, and the smallest motion could send shards falling like glass. Crews labored through darkness to strike sails before they shattered, working with bare hands that bled on frozen hemp. You peek through the hatch. The deck glows faintly under a pale moon. Frost clings to rails, barrels, and men standing guard. They move carefully, boots crunching, breath rising in slow white spirals. The sea appears slushy, thick with ice crystals. Every sound is muted, as if the world is encased in glass. A shipwreck survivor described this as a world made of knives. The snapping of frozen sails like cannon fire. You almost hear it now. Cracks splitting the air, followed by massed groans. Those who survived remembered such nights for life. Below deck, men prepare as best they can. The cook keeps a kettle of water near the lantern to warm returning hands. Salt, meat, and tea fill the narrow space, comforting in their simplicity. One pirate sharpens a blade out of habit. Another mumbles while patching a glove with stolen thread. Faces are pale but eyes calm. The sea has taught them not to fight the cold, only to work around it. A French naval log notes that pirates used hammocks as insulation when rigging froze. They lined beams with cloth, trapping the small warmth rising from lamps. It worked, if only a little. You look up and see the same strategy repeated. Blankets hung like heavy curtains, edges stiff with frost. Every small measure becomes a defense. Above, the quartermaster's steady, low voice issues orders. No one shouts in this cold. Sound itself seems fragile. The men move with precision, cutting ice from ropes and adjusting sails that have lost their flexibility. Fingers are red and raw. Someone slips, mutters a curse, and continues working. What strikes you is the calm. These pirates, famed for chaos, face nature's fury with the patience of monks. One historian suggested the sea's brutality forged discipline better than any captain could. Another argued that a quiet awareness of mortality kept them steady. In these moments, pride fades, survival demands cooperation, and arrogance freezes faster than water. Frost thickens along the beams, spreading like lace. Each thread catches the lamplight, glowing faintly gold. Beautiful yet cruel. The ship feels smaller, trapped in a cage of its own making. Yet within that confinement exists a strange intimacy. Everyone aboard breathes in rhythm, moving together as one through the frozen dark. A gust shakes the hull. Snow slips from the rigging, scattering like ash. For a moment, you feel as if adrift inside a snow globe, separated from the world. The wind deepens. The ship leans sharply before settling again. Hammocks swing in unison, a few men groaning in sleep. None fully awaken, they have learned that fear wastes warmth. You consider the ship's fragility. Planks and nails separating skin from the abyss. And yet, they trust it completely, calling it by name, repairing it with care. To a pirate, a ship is more than wood. It is memory, protection, and home. The cold presses inward. Your fingers ache as you pull your coat tighter. The lantern flame flickers, threatened by lack of air. You cup your hands near it, feeling the tiny heat sting. Above, a bell rings twice, a change of watch. The sound carries through frozen beams like a heartbeat. In that moment, something inside softens. Life persists even in ice-laden silence, measured not in minutes but in courage. You settle back into your hammock, swaying gently. The sea groans below, restless but restrained. Somewhere in the dark, a man hums the same wordless tune you heard earlier. It blends with creaks and the faint hiss of wind, forming a fragile lullaby against the cold. Surrounded by ice and courage, you close your eyes. The rigging crackles softly, yet no fear remains. It is the sea speaking through the ship, testing, warning, promising. You breathe slowly, and for a fleeting moment, frost shimmers like stars in the ropes. The ship rocks once more, and everything fades into survival's rhythm. The night stretches long and glassy. You awaken to soft, quick movements nearby, followed by a faint purr. Opening your eyes, you see a cat balanced on a beam, puffed against frost. It gazes down with molten copper eyes, then leaps lightly into a hammock beside a sleeping sailor. The man shifts, grunting, and allows the cat to curl against his chest. For a brief instant, the world feels tender. Cats were common aboard ships of every flag. 17th century maritime records note them as essential passengers. They hunted rats, protected grain stores, and served as good luck charms. On pirate vessels, they held deeper meaning. Sailors believed cats sensed the weather, becoming restless before storms. Some swore a cat sleeping near a man meant the sea favored him that night. Watching this one now, tail twitching, the stories almost feel real. The cold bites harder here, yet life's warmth persists. The sailor shifts again, drawing his coat tighter around both himself and the cat. Nearby, another man stirs, murmuring to a monkey at the foot of his hammock. The creature hides its face in his scarf, trembling slightly. These animals, companions to thieves, brought comfort where none seemed possible. A Dutch trading ship account notes pirates carrying parrots, monkeys, and small dogs as mascots. Some were plunder, others strays. In winter, the animals became living blankets pressed close to human skin. The relationship was mutual. Animals survived, and pirates found solace. You can almost imagine the quiet laughter at dusk. A cat chasing its tail, a monkey stealing scraps. On nights like this, though, laughter fades to breathing. Every creature aboard, human or animal, breathes together to keep the cold at bay. Maritime superstition held that a cat leaving the ship meant bad luck, while one sleeping near men offered protection from nightmares. Sailors tied ribbons around collars or shared a drop of rum, symbols of care. To outsiders, it may seem foolish, but on an endless, cold ocean, a heartbeat beside you proves the world is still kind. You watch the cat on the beam. Its fur glows in lantern light, whiskers catching the shine. When it stretches, tiny warmth prints the frost. You smile. Amid salt, damp, and danger, such small grace feels miraculous. A sailor once wrote of a dream where his ship's cat guided him home. The next morning, land appeared. He kept a tuft of its fur until he died. Truth matters less than the heart's need for symbols in a cold, endless world. The monkey chatters softly, waking its owner. The man laughs quietly, rubbing its head. Pirates are remembered for violence, yet in darkness, their gentleness tells another story. Living closer to death perhaps made them softer in hidden ways. Maritime researchers note these bonds with animals served psychological needs long before modern understanding. Easing fear, giving purpose, sustaining hope. Even feeding a pet became an act of hope during harsh winters. The air grows colder. Frost spreads across the ceiling beams. The cat lifts its head, ears flicking as if sensing beyond your perception. It meows softly, then curls tighter, a small warmth clinging stubbornly to life. The monkey settles back into its hammock, wrapping its tail gently around the man's wrist. For a moment, the cabin seems to pause. Outside, the sea shifts beneath a layer of ice. The ship rocks slowly, calmer than before. You hear a faint scratching, maybe another rat or the wind clawing at the boards. Either way, the animals remain composed, their instincts undisturbed. That calm spreads through the room, a quiet, steady comfort. You close your eyes again. The sound of purring blends with the ship's soft hum. You realize warmth is not always born of fire. Sometimes it lives in small hearts, in fur against skin, in silent companionship. A final line from an old sailor's diary comes to mind. We feared the storms and trusted the cats. In a world of cold steel and salt, the warmth of a small creature might be the truest treasure. As the lantern fades, the purr continues, rhythmic and sure, carrying the ship and its sleeping crew through the frozen night. Before dawn, you wake to murmured voices in the half-light. The cold bites, your breath forming small clouds. Two men lean over a wooden crate, whispering near a lantern's flicker. You notice they are tracing the outline of a map. The parchment is old, edges curled, stained with salt and oil, glowing faintly in the dim light. Their whispers slide through the air, punctuated by quiet laughter and sighs of disbelief. Dreams are being plotted here. On pirate ships, bedtime stories were not for children, they were tales of treasure. Maps, both real and imagined, passed from hand to hand like sacred relics. Historians have found fragments of such charts in museums, drawn on animal hide, sailcloth, and even scraps of prayer books. The lines rarely matched real coasts, yet they gave men something to believe in. You move closer, smelling rum and candle wax. One pirate taps the map with a scarred finger. His companion grins, murmuring, "Tomorrow we're rich, Perhaps they don't fully believe it, but in the middle of a frozen ocean, even a comforting lie is worth keeping alive. Maritime records note that pirates often shared these stories not out of greed, but for comfort. Legends of islands with sand like gold, or caverns where jewels grew from stone, offered hope. Some maps were drawn purely for amusement, sketched by firelight with bits of charcoal. One man invented an island, another swore he had seen it. Soon, the crew debated as if they had all visited. It was a game, a ritual. To dream of treasure was to dream of tomorrow. A British naval officer's journal captured such moments. He noted pirates spoke of gold with the tenderness of poets, as if each coin held the warmth lost to the sea. You smile, there is truth in that. To a man freezing in a hammock, treasure was not wealth but remembered sunlight. The two men fold the map carefully, hiding it beneath a blanket. One stretches, pulling his coat tight. The other lingers, eyes half closed, smiling, perhaps already dreaming of the island they invented. Stories grow strongest where light is scarce. Centuries later, scholars would debate whether most pirate maps ever existed. Some call them myths born of boredom. Others argue they were coded guides for smugglers. The debate continues, yet the idea survives. Perhaps that is the point. You lie back, watching the faint glow on the cabin ceiling. Voices fade into the slow breathing of the crew. The air feels heavy with memories of treasure, freedom, and revenge. Dreams linger like warmth long after rum and lanterns vanish. In the hush, you imagine the maps alive, whispering promises as the ship drifts, coastlines curling in secret shapes. A Portuguese sailor once wrote, "Maps are not for the finding of gold, but for the remembering of home." Perhaps pirates understood this too. The lines they traced may not have led to treasure, but to memory, land that didn't sway beneath their feet. The cold returns, slipping through the wooden seams. You pull your blanket higher. Outside, the sea groans quietly. The map plotters are silent, their dreams sailing ahead. Falling asleep surrounded by myth must have been strange. These men, feared by empires, found peace in imagination. They fought by day, but at night, they built worlds no storm could touch. Perhaps this explains why pirate tales survived. Each story told before sleep planted another seed in memory. Centuries later, a storyteller would repeat the words, and the dream would live again. The lantern flickers and fades. Darkness folds over you like a wave. The rustle of parchment lingers, as if the sea itself traces invisible lines across its surface. You close your eyes, drifting into that imagined world. Frost no longer bites, waves no longer threaten. You can almost see the map, coastlines of memory, islands of warmth, oceans of sleep. Somewhere in that dream lies a simple truth. Hope drawn in ink, whispered in the dark, is the warmest fire a pirate could have. The cold feels different tonight, quieter, as if the ship accepts it. You wake to a low creak above, hammocks swaying gently, ropes glinting in weak light. Lanterns have burned low, turning everything amber and soft. The men sleep at varying heights, strung like a constellation of dreaming bodies. Their arrangement is deliberate. Hammocks are not just beds, they reflect status. Records from captured pirate ships show the hierarchy of the crew became most visible at night. The captain's hammock, wider and lined with finer cloth, usually hung near the cabin's center, where the ship's sway was gentlest. The quartermaster rested nearby, not in comfort, but for quick access to the door. The lower hammocks belonged to younger sailors, still proving themselves. You tilt your head and take in the pattern. It resembles the tiers of a theater, each level offering a different perspective. Higher hammocks sway gently, while the lower ones creak and bump against barrels or beams. Frost glistens on the boards beneath the bottom row. It is a quiet injustice, softened by the rhythm of sleep. An English traveler who lived among privateers once wrote, "Every ship carries its own sky, and men hang their stars according to their pride." The words resonate now. Even in rest, the order of the ship shows itself. Yet, unlike the Navy where rank was fixed, pirate hierarchies were fluid. A sailor who braved a stormy watch might find his hammock raised the next day. One who shirked his duties could be moved to the coldest corner. Disputes sometimes arose over space. A surviving set of pirate articles from the early 18th century included a clause about hammock placement, ensuring fair distance so no man swung into another. It may seem minor, but in such cramped quarters, fairness in sleep meant fairness in spirit. You listen to the hammocks creaking in uneven rhythm. Each swing forms its own melody, a reminder that even harmony carries individuality. Higher hammocks drift like calm waves. Lower ones jerk sharply with every ship movement. The effect is hypnotic, a choreography of exhaustion. One hammock draws your eye, hanging nearly to the ceiling, tied with thick ropes and padded with what appears to be stolen velvet. It speaks of pride. Just below, a young sailor huddles under a threadbare blanket, his breath visible in the cold. Fortune and hardship hang mere feet apart, bound to the same beam. A French prisoner once noted that pirates used hammocks not just for sleep but for negotiation. A man could offer his warmer spot as an apology, exchanging hammocks without words. At night, the ship became a quiet court, each hammock a territory. The creak of rope might signal anger. The rustle of cloth could mean agreement. Even rest was political, as space and warmth were currency. Historians find this system remarkable. Despite lawlessness, pirates maintained a flexible social balance. Hammock hierarchies were temporary, based on merit rather than birth. A man's place could rise or fall with the tide, a form of democracy woven from rope and exhaustion. You close your eyes, imagining a view from the ceiling. The cabin is filled with suspended bodies, each with its own stories and scars. Lantern light flickers like a slow heartbeat across faces. Some turned upward, mouths slightly open, others buried in folds of cloth. No two hammocks swing alike, yet together they form a rhythm that feels alive. A sailor once wrote that he dreamed better in a crowded cabin than alone. When we sway together, he said, the sea feels less endless. You understand now. Hammocks are not just beds, but lifelines, keeping men tethered as the outside world tries to freeze them apart. Above, ice cracks along the mast. The sound travels through beams and hammocks, waking no one but echoing through the threads. For a moment, the ship seems to breathe as one, a pulse of survival. You adjust your blanket and let the sound settle. Hierarchy fades in the dark. Captain and boy, veteran and thief, all sway under the same ceiling, warmed by the same borrowed air. The cold does not favor anyone. It tests all equally. As the lantern dims, you drift, rocked by the collective rhythm. Hammocks creak in a chorus of sleep. In that sound lies the truth. Even in the coldest night, order and chaos find a fragile balance in motion. You wake before dawn. The air is thick with damp and smoke. Each breath tastes faintly of tar. The ship moves less. Waves have softened, but the stillness is heavy. Below decks, the air is stale, used, and full of the scent of sleep itself. Tar, rope, unwashed wool, lantern smoke, and faint rot mingling into a single odor of the sea. Merchant ship records describe the same thing. Survivors remembered it years later. It clung to clothes, hair, skin. For pirates, it was the perfume of life between battles. You sit up and listen. Hammocks creak as men shift, cough, and stretch. Someone yawns and mutters a prayer. Human warmth presses through the air. Condensation forms slick trails along the walls. A Dutch naval surgeon once described this smell as proof of survival. A healthy ship should stink. The scent of bodies meant warmth, warmth meant life. Clean winter air indicated men dead or dying. The logic is strange but clear. The odor is unpleasant, yet comforting, the scent of persistence. Beneath sweat and wool lies another layer. Fish oil, tar, salt. It smells like the ocean's throat, seeping into everything. Clothes never fully dry. Blankets become repositories of history. Archaeologists studying preserved ship fabrics note traces of oil and smoke centuries later. One sailor pushes upright, rubbing his face. His beard glistens with moisture. He sniffs, grimaces, then laughs softly. "Smells like home," he mutters. A companion groans and pulls his blanket tighter. The sound is tender, an inside joke needing no explanation. Pirates often teased newcomers about the smell. An English traveler noted that green sailors gagged during their first week, only to find the stench comforting after a month. It marked belonging, a strange baptism by odor. You can imagine them now, mocking the newcomers as they coughed through the night. Some tried to fight it. A few ships burned herbs or citrus peels near the galley to freshen the air, though the effort was mostly in vain. Others hung small bags of crushed mint or lavender by their hammocks, taken from captured cargo. A letter from a French privateer notes that these scents mixed poorly with tar, producing what he called a perfume of hell. The description brings an involuntary smile. Here, smell becomes memory. The scent of tar signals safety. Smoke means warmth. Even the pungent odor of wet wool signals endurance. It is as if the body learns to turn discomfort into reassurance. The mind adapts, reshaping disgust into nostalgia. Modern researchers studying historical ships confirm that smell affected morale almost as much as hunger or fatigue. Below deck, the air was so thick that some men developed mild dizziness or headaches. Yet most grew immune to it. They stopped noticing until it vanished, usually after storms when cold air swept in, leaving them feeling exposed, as if a familiar presence had disappeared. You reach out and touch the beam above you. Feels damp, sticky. A thin line of frost has formed where condensation meets the cold wood. The ship's smell seems to gather here, rich and layered. Thousands of men over centuries inhaled something similar, the shared scent of hardship and hope. One sailor wrote in a recovered log that his ship smelled like a life halfway between heaven and earth. Now you understand. It is the smell of existence suspended between survival and surrender. Around you, the crew begins to stir. Someone strikes flint against steel, and a spark ignites another lantern. The glow spreads slowly, revealing faces glistening with sweat and condensation. The smell intensifies as warmth returns to the air. Foul yet familiar, it binds everyone together in quiet acceptance. You take a deep breath. The odor is harsh but grounding. The room is alive again, vibrating with sound. Leather creaking, ropes groaning, faint laughter. It is remarkable how people learn to accept, even love, the foulest aspects of their world. For these pirates, the smell of the ship meant freedom, distance from land and law. It proved they still lived, still fought, still dreamed beneath the same wooden ceiling. As you lie back in your hammock, you realize the air holds every story the ship has known. Sweat from battles, smoke from torches, salt from storms, all blended into something unmistakably human. You close your eyes and imagine the ship exhaling through its timbers, scent rising like memory itself. The smell of sleep, terrible and sacred, drifts over you before surrendering again to rest. You wake with a faint taste of metal in your mouth. The storm has eased, but silence feels heavy, pressed down by exhaustion. The crew moves slowly, drained of energy. You notice it in their breathing, in the dullness behind their eyes. Sleep here is no luxury. It is a weapon, guarded as carefully as any blade. Naval surgeons' records confirm what pirates already knew. Fatigue could kill as surely as hunger. A man without sleep was as dangerous to comrades as enemies. His reactions dulled, judgment slipped, and on wet planks in a storm, one hesitation could doom the ship. Captains rationed rest as carefully as food or rum. In the dim cabin, signs of wear are everywhere. Faces drawn tight, pale under flickering lantern light. One sailor rocks gently with his head in his hands, keeping time with the creaking timbers. Another sharpens his dagger slowly, scraping rhythmically along wet stone. These are not gestures of menace but survival, ways to stay awake until rest returns. Letters from captured corsairs mention this discipline. Men able to sleep anywhere at any moment were as prized as skilled navigators. They could collapse between cannon volleys or in the shadow of storms. Sleep became a tool, not a luxury. You picture one such man leaning against a barrel, eyes closing as the deck tilts beneath him, fingers curled around his cutlass, breathing steady. Within seconds, he is gone, sunk into the deep black quiet only the utterly exhausted can reach. When the next bell rings, he will rise as if nothing happened, mind reset by necessity. A privateer once called this the sleep of the hunted, writing that men living in constant danger rested with one ear open, heart slowing but never fully surrendering. Their dreams were short, sharp, reflecting the life they led. Watching, you notice how carefully this balance is maintained. The quartermaster moves between hammocks, counting softly. If a man sleeps too long, he is shaken awake, given water, told to stretch before returning to rest. Oversleeping was as dangerous as sleeplessness. Too much rest stiffened muscles and dulled instincts. A scholar of maritime psychology wrote that pirates understood recovery before the term existed. Their nightly routine balanced exhaustion and alertness, always hovering just above collapse. The only way to survive weeks at sea. The most haunting stories come from those who lost that balance. One legend tells of a lookout who stayed awake 3 days during a storm. When he finally lay down, he never rose. His comrade insisted he was not dead, only sleeping too deeply, caught between life and dream. No one dared touch him for a full day. You shift in your hammock and glance at the others. Even in rest, tension lingers. Hands twitch, shoulders jerk. You can almost see the invisible weight pressing on them, the constant readiness the sea demands. This is not surrender, but vigilance. Pirates mastered the art of turning rest into defense. A Spanish merchant described their terrifying efficiency in midnight attacks. They fought as though awakened already in battle. It was training, not bravado. Short, practiced naps allowed them to function at any hour, converting fatigue into focus. You cannot help but admire it. In a world that devoured the unprepared, they turned sleep into an act of defiance. Every moment of rest reclaimed strength from the cold, hunger, and fear itself. You wonder if they knew that their discipline would echo centuries later, studied by soldiers and scientists alike. The lantern above flutters as a gust slips through the hatch. Shadows ripple across the hammocks, and someone murmurs, "My turn yet!" The quartermaster's calm reply comes, "Sleep while you can." Simple words, absolute, almost like scripture. You close your eyes again. The ship rocks gently, and the rhythm of breathing around you becomes a tide. You can almost feel the collective heartbeat of the crew, slow and steady, pulsing through the floorboards, the sound of endurance. For a moment, you understand the trust these men placed in sleep. Each nap, each stolen moment of stillness, was an act of courage in a world that offered no mercy. Outside, the sea is vast, dark, and endless. Inside, the pirates sleep, not victims of exhaustion, but masters of it. Warriors resting between storms. As your own mind drifts, you carry their lesson. In chaos, sleep itself can be a weapon, and peace can be earned even in the coldest dark. The world outside gleams silver tonight, the sea stretched beneath a thin winter moon. You lie in your hammock, awake but calm, following the slow sway of shadows above. The storm has passed, leaving the air clear and sharp. Every sound is heightened. The soft rattle of rope, the low moan of the wind, the distant brush of water against the hull. You tilt your head toward the masthead, where moonlight spills through cracks. It is striking how bright the night becomes when the moon breaks through clouds. The light dances across the timbers, turning rough planks into glassy mirrors. The ocean reflects it too, blurring sky and water together. Pirates often called this the sea's truest hour, when the world seemed to have no beginning or end. In such moments, even fearless men fell silent, watching the moon as if it held their names. Diaries show sailors treated moonlight as a companion, speaking to it during night watch and measuring time by its movement across the deck. A captain's log from 175 records men looking to it for hours, finding in its glow the patience they had lost. And it's easy to see why. The moon moves slowly, eternally, touching every restless surface without judgment. You pull your blanket closer, watching the light where it falls through the hatch. Beams trace shifting patterns on the floorboards, strangely peaceful despite their coldness. You imagine pirates who once lay here, eyes open, listening to the sea and marking time by the moon's climb. One journal tells of a pirate who claimed he could tell the hour by the angle of moonlight on his hammock, calling it the silver clock. His shipmates laughed, yet many came to rely on his accuracy. Scholars today see it as keen observation, but it shows how deeply these men lived by light and motion. The ceiling glows faintly, shifting with the ship's rise and fall. The movement is hypnotic, like slow breathing, untethered to danger or urgency. The moon's steady light, indifferent to storms, must have felt sacred to those used to chaos. A letter from a sailor's wife recalls her husband's inability to sleep indoors after years at sea. He missed the play of light across walls. She wrote that the moon kept him honest, revealing every man as he truly was. Night grows quieter. The only motion is the ship's slow turn and frost forming along the ropes, shining like dusted glass. A few men stir, ghostly in faint light. No one speaks. The moon commands the silence. Another superstition held that one should never curse under a full moon at sea. Doing so invited bad weather or betrayal. Some said speaking kindly to it brought fair wind, whether from belief or hope. Pirates always nodded toward the moon before sleep, as if greeting an old friend. Your eyes drift back to the hatch. The moon has shifted, casting a thin silver path on the floor. You imagine walking along it, barefoot, out across the waves until the cold no longer matters. Water and wind blend, and the boundary between body and sea blurs. Perhaps this was the freedom they spoke of. A captured ship's log describes pirates asleep under moonlight as men turn to marble, frozen in silver. Yet the writer admitted the scene held beauty, reminding him even thieves could seem peaceful when the world paused its judgment. Your eyelids grow heavy. Clouds dim the moon briefly, softening the light across your blanket. The ship sighs, its sound rolling through the timbers. The moon returns, pale and forgiving, brushing walls with light. For pirates, this quiet hour was a rare mercy. No shouts, no battles, only the steady glow of a celestial companion. Some prayed to it silently. Others let its light cradle them into sleep. You close your eyes, listening to the mast creaking softly above. The moon climbs steadily. The ship drifts, rocked by invisible hands. The cold feels less cruel, almost clean air washed by silver. In this moment, you realize the moonlight on the masthead was the truest companion these pirates had. It watched them dream, forgave their sins, and followed them across frozen seas. The air is colder, yet quieter. You awaken to the creak of hinges and the soft click of a latch. A faint glow spills from the narrow doorway to the surgeon's cabin. A room carries a faint, persistent smell of metal, herbs, and lingering ghosts. You slip from your hammock and step closer. Inside, the air feels heavier, dense with memory. The surgeon's quarters are small, barely wider than a narrow corridor. At the center, a wooden table dominates, its surface scarred by years of work. Knives hang neatly on nails along the wall, their edges dulled by rust and salt. Above, bottles line a shelf, filled with murky liquid that catches the lantern light like amber. Alcohol and vinegar scent the air, used for cleaning wounds or dulling pain. Every pirate recognized that smell as fear disguised with false cleanliness. Naval records described the surgeon's cabin as a place of both miracles and nightmares. Lives were saved, but just as often lost, sometimes within the same night. Pirate surgeons were cruder, improvising with stolen tools and instinct. Few were formally trained. Many were barbers, cooks, or prisoners pressed into service. Necessity taught them quickly. A life often depended on steady hands in a storm. You run your fingers lightly along the table's edge. The wood is cold, and a small groove beneath your fingertips is sticky with old residue. You imagine the scenes that unfolded here. Blood mingling with candlelight, whispered prayers drowned by crashing waves, men biting leather straps to stifle their screams. Some nights, the cabin would glow red as lantern light reflected off wet blades. Pirates had rituals for dealing with pain. Often, the crew would gather nearby, singing softly during amputations, drowning out cries and giving the patient a rhythm to breathe through. One surgeon's log notes that humming steadied his hand, allowing him to work faster. Modern historians call it psychological distraction, but pirates saw it as respect, a companion for a man facing agony. In the corner, a smaller hammock hangs between two beams, likely the surgeon's own bed, though sleep here would have been shallow and uneasy. Even at rest, he would listen for footsteps in the dark, the call signaling another patient waiting. Shadows in this room feel different, thicker, slower, saturated with memory. A scrap of fabric hangs from a hook, once white, now brown with age. You touch it gently, wondering whose life it might have saved or failed. Wreck salvage accounts often show tools scattered as they were left. Saws, needles, clamps. Even when death claimed the ship, the cabin remained untouched, as though the ghosts of its work refused to move on. One bottle catches your eye. It holds a faintly glowing liquid, perhaps lamp oil or brandy infused with herbs. Sailors trusted such concoctions to fight infection, though most were superstition rather than science. Some surgeons used ground coral or powdered bone, believing the ocean itself could heal its wounds. Whether this belief saved lives is uncertain, but faith was powerful medicine. An old sea diary tells of a surgeon who claimed the ship could feel its cruise pain. After an amputation, he said, the planks beneath him groaned as if mourning. His comrades laughed, yet even they could not deny that the sea's sound grew louder on such nights. Perhaps imagination, perhaps empathy etched into the timber. You step back and absorb the stillness. Lantern light trembles across jars and instruments, making them seem alive. Sailors avoided this room unless necessary, even without blood. The air is heavy with memory. Yet there is something sacred here. In a world built on taking, this was a place attempting to give something back, however clumsily. The surgeon's cabin was where death was challenged, if only briefly. A soft groan draws your attention. A man near the door clutches his arm, a fresh bandage in place. The cloth is stained but clean, the surgeon has worked recently. The patient's breathing steadies, and you exhale without realizing you'd been holding it. Lantern light flickers, fading from gold to dull red, then shadow. You quietly return to your hammock. The cabin's scent lingers, sharp and sour. It is not pleasant, yet reassuring. It signifies that even in the world's coldest corners, someone still fought for life. You lie back, eyes closing. Memories of the room remain behind your eyelids. The lantern glow, the shimmer of steel, the rhythm of breath and blade. Not peaceful but honest. As sleep draws you under, you think of the surgeon's lonely hammock, the men who trusted his trembling hands, and how he tried, again and again, to delay the darkness. When you wake, the air feels thick and still. The ship seems to rest, as if the sea itself has grown tired. Lantern light spills faintly through the beams, a hint of dawn, but then you hear it. A slow, delicate clinking. It is not the ocean. It is music. A pirate sits cross-legged on the floor, back hunched, hands moving over a small contraption catching the lantern's glow. You realize it is a tiny music box, carved from bone. The pale surface gleams, etched with frost-like lines. The tune is faint, uneven, yet hauntingly sweet. Sailors often built odd items from journey debris. Bone and ivory became combs, beads, pipes, trinkets. For pirates, such crafts were more than pastime. They were confessions, a way to keep hands busy during long nights of cold and guilt. This music box must have taken weeks to craft. Its lid is smooth except for one carved design, a skull cradled by folded wings. As he winds it, tiny gears whisper against one another. The melody is simple, almost like a lullaby. The room softens around it. The other men do not ask him to stop. They listen, eyes closed, as if the music belongs to them too. Maritime archives contain references to instruments made from bone. Some were flutes, others crude violins fashioned from driftwood and wire. The most extraordinary discovery came from a wreck near the Azores. A box nearly identical to this one, its crank still intact after 2 centuries. When restored, it played a tune that researchers identified as part of a French lullaby. How it ended up on a pirate ship remains a mystery, But the find reveals something often overlooked in history. Those who lived by the sword still needed moments of softness. You watch the craftsman's hands. Rough, cracked, and scarred, they handle fragile gears as though touching glass. He leans close, humming under his breath. The faint, steady sound fills the cabin with reverence. Another man reaches into his pocket, pulling out a small whistle carved from coral, joining the tune with a soft, almost inaudible note. Soon, a third voice hums from a hammock, then another. The fragile melody transforms into a network of harmony. The music winds through the air, circling beams and touching even the coldest corners. This, too, was a means of endurance. Music, even crude or broken, stitched their spirits together after days of fear and violence. A note from a sailor's diary in 1711 describes nightly concerts of heart-made noise and memory, a reminder that even amid the sea's harshness, they remained human. One legend tells of a pirate who believed the sea could hear his music. He claimed his bone flute could calm storms. His comrades mocked him, until one night he played through a gale and the winds eased. From then on, no one questioned him. Historians doubt the tale, yet the belief itself often brought comfort on ships where hope was scarce. The melody continues, low and patient. The ship rocks gently, keeping rhythm. The vibration passes through the floorboards, subtle but constant, like the vessel's heartbeat. The cold still lingers along the walls, yet it feels less harsh, softened by the music. The man finishes the tune and rests his hands on his knees. Silence returns slowly, fading like a quiet sigh. An older sailor murmurs, "Play it again." The musician nods without looking up, closing the box carefully beside his hammock. The faint click of the lid sounds like a prayer's punctuation. Modern scholars studying maritime artifacts describe this craftsmanship as a survival language, a silent dialogue between hardship and imagination. Pirates did not carve for luxury. They carved out of necessity. Each small creation proved that even in a world ruled by violence and frost, beauty could survive. You glance again at the tiny box, its pale edges glowing in lantern light. Inside, a coil of wire still holds tension, ready to sing once more. Perhaps the next storm will awaken it. Perhaps it will outlast everyone aboard, lying quietly until a future hand winds it again. You lie back in your hammock, listening to the last faint echoes vibrating through the wood. Outside, the sea returns to its slow, endless rhythm. For a few moments, music and waves seem to breathe together. The ship feels warmer, so does your chest. You close your eyes. The tune lingers, faint yet steady, and the line between man and ghost seems softer. In that sound, you hear what history books often ignore. Tired hearts discovering beauty in the dark. The wind shifts. When you wake, the air no longer smells of salt and ice, but soil and smoke. The ship slows. The sound beneath the hull softens to the hush of water against wood. You climb toward the hatch, peering through a narrow slit. Beyond the rail, the dark outline of land waits beneath a gray horizon. After weeks adrift in cold and wind, the pirates have reached a harbor. Winter ports were rare gifts. Even pirates sought shelter where the sea allowed it. Historical accounts describe these harbors as lonely, semi-frozen spaces where crews could repair ships, mend clothing, and sleep without fearing the waves. Men would stagger ashore like ghosts, legs trembling after nights spent rocking with the ocean. In your mind, you follow them onto the dock. Snow crunches beneath boots. They blink at the stillness of land, their voices rougher and louder as if surprised to hear themselves. Stretching, yawning, laughing, tension drains from their faces. The harbor is small, a few huts and a tavern with smoke curling from its chimney. A Dutch traveler's diary from 178 describes such a port, a place where time barely moved, and men drifted through frost like shadows. Inside, the tavern smelled of pine and old rum. Pirates sat by the hearth, not as conquerors, but as weary pilgrims. Wet coats steamed, boots dried by the fire. Laughter rose slowly after weeks of silence. Sleep came differently here. No hammocks, no swaying deck, only the hard comfort of wooden floors and benches. Some sprawled beside the fire. Others collapsed at tables, mugs still in hand. A few restless souls stayed on the dock beneath the stars, staring at the still water as if waiting for it to breathe again. One sailor wrote of his first night on land after months at sea. The bed did not move and I could not rest. I missed the heartbeat of the waves. After so long in motion, the absence of rhythm felt unsettling, as if the world had stopped. The pirates likely felt the same, their bodies attuned to the sea's music even as they sought quiet. Now you imagine the tavern's warmth. The fire burns low, its flickering light reflecting off walls. Men sleep in uneven piles, blankets tangled, boots scattered. The air hums with the hiss of splitting logs. Smoke and sweat mix with pine resin and baked bread. It is not clean, but it is alive. For the first time in months, no one rocks in sleep. Outside, the harbor groans beneath thin ice. Ships rest in still water, masts crusted with frost. The sky above is pale, erasing distance. A cat prowls the dock, paw prints vanishing as snow falls. A church bell tolls nearby, its sound cutting through the cold like a memory. Some historians argue that these brief winter ports shaped pirate folklore more than the sea itself. Here, free from storms and battle, pirates told stories, carved charms, and rewrote legends. They traded with fishermen, sang with locals, and sometimes disappeared into villages for weeks before returning to the ship. In the quiet intervals between their voyages, they were simply men trying to remember what it meant to be human. One curious entry in a coastal ledger mentions a pirate who spent an entire winter repairing sails for nearby villages in exchange for warm meals. When spring arrived, he refused to leave until the ice melted from the bay. "The sea will wait for me," he said. The record notes that perhaps he simply needed to remember what stillness felt like. You close your eyes and picture that harbor again. Snow drifts through lamplight soft as ash. The tavern door creaks open, letting warmth spill into the night. Inside, someone snores by the fire. Another stirs his drink without waking. The scene is peaceful, delicate, the kind of peace that feels temporary even as you breathe it in. The pirates who endured that winter would carry these memories back to the sea. The solid ground beneath their boots, the heat of the fire, the scent of wood smoke in their hair. These recollections would sustain them through many frozen nights ahead. A sailor's diary recovered from the Baltic echoes this longing. "When I dream at sea, it is not of gold, but of the sound of snow on the roof." You can almost hear that sound now, soft, steady, wrapping the harbor like a lullaby. Beyond the breakwater, the sea waits, patient and dark. But tonight, it allows its wanderers to rest. You feel that calm settle within you, too, a rare stillness tied to solid ground. As the fire's last embers fade, the pirates sleep without fear of frostbite or drowning. Outside, the wind carries the faint scent of salt back to the waves, a reminder that this peace is borrowed. Yet even borrowed peace can be enough. You lie back in your mind's hammock, warmed by the fire, letting the image dissolve into darkness. The frozen harbor, the hush of snow, the quiet gratitude of men who have found, if only for one night, a place to rest. The snow has stopped, leaving the world clean and hushed. Inside, the fire's glow stretches across the floor in uneven stripes of gold. You awaken slowly, hearing low voices near the far wall. Two pirates sit at a wooden table, a single candle flickering between them. One holds a small, folded scrap of parchment, smoothing it carefully on the table. The other leans forward, eyes fixed. It takes a moment to register that this is not a map, but a letter, a love letter, its edges softened by time and travel. The reader speaks quietly, deliberately, as if speaking the words aloud keeps them alive. The other listens, eyes unfocused, perhaps thinking of someone left behind. Personal letters were treasures aboard pirate ships, rarer than gold. Naval records show men often carried fragments of handwriting tucked in their clothing or stitched into bedding. Paper was fragile at sea, but love made sailors inventive. Some pressed letters between boards, others wrapped them in oiled cloth, and a few sewed them beneath hammock seams, believing the words would guard their dreams.